one of the most poignant was introduced yesterday, which is Senate Bill 220. And that's a property tax deferral program to help seniors on their property taxes, knowing about the increase that's coming in 2023. Seniors are able to complete an application, and then the state approves the deferral for property taxes. So those payments won't need to be made until the house sells or until the resident decides. We're hearing a lot right now too. We're trying to be super conscientious about fraud. There's we haven't seen it at all in Broomfield, but some of our neighboring communities are reporting outreach and engagement about reverse mortgages. I think we've all seen the TV commercials about, you know, reverse mortgage, and it's going to free you up. You're going to have a lot of money, and there's a lot of small print in a lot of companies that are doing that with regards to assuming control of the house. So we have paying attention to that closely. Council at the retreat, we had a conversation as well about property taxes for seniors, what that exemption looks like, and how best to deal with that as we move forward, knowing that that impact is going to significantly hit our seniors. So keeping a close eye on that, but that is and that's a bipartisan bill. So we know in this climate that when you have a bipartisan bill, it's the likelihood that it's going to go through quick is pretty darn high. And on this one, that everybody's very grateful for that. Let's see, oil and gas, everybody continues to track 1348. We have 2 council members on the phone right now that were pivotal with regards to those communications and testimony. Let's see, 1361, the oil and gas reporting bill was heard on the 20th. It requires the office, the state auditor to conduct a performance audit on the operations, the reporting, and the revenue. When the auditor initially went through the information, that it was either, the majority of it was either incorrect or not reported at all. So there's no mechanism to continue to follow up to administer accurate information. So this bill is designed to essentially to do that and to come up with the meter readings and a different subset of folks in order to go out reading those meters. So again, the initial reporting is one piece. It's the audit that is really a significant lift. So we'll have to see. Implementation is what it just jams everybody up. So when you're thinking about when you do a first blush at any kind of audit report and it is fraught with errors, the indication when you have a very small sample size is that you're going to find a whole lot more. And so they're certainly anticipating as they start going down that rabbit hole, this is going to be a huge lift. Let's see, the orphaned oil and gas bill 198, Senate Bill 198 passed through, no, I'm sorry, it was sent to the Finance Committee on Wednesday on the 20th and unamended to approps. So the amendments are becoming less and less. Generally with the bill, if it makes it to appropriations without amendments, it's pretty high and tight. It's only when you start seeing the back and forth that you can generally be confident that something else is going to happen, and that is not the case with this bill. They're estimating about 500 orphan wells. COGCC is, but again, it's another one of these. If you haven't tracked it, then you don't have a sense. And so there, at first blush, there was about 500. All expectations and anticipation is that that number is will be anywhere between much higher and significantly higher. Everyone's definition of much higher, it depends on who you ask, but suffices to say 500 is not the number. It's only larger than that. Let's see, moving to sustainability, 1362, House Bill 1362, the greenhouse emissions bill was heard today in approps. Appropriations happens on Wednesday and Friday mornings. That's why most lobbyists, anytime something goes to approps, it just means that you're going to have a late night the night before, and then you're up at 7:30 for the approps meeting, which is what time those committee meetings are. So it requires to adopt and enforce model energy and low carbon codes. So we've noted before, again, this is another repeat bill. And for us, it's essentially moot because we are on track already to have the 2021 codes adopted by 2025 through our standard code update process. Let's see. Oh, this is an interesting piece. So it's the second piece of that bill. It would entail voluntary delegation of powers because we're a home rule municipality to the state energy office. And so it's beyond staff's authority, obviously. It would go back to council if we wanted to, I don't want to say abdicate because that's too large and impactful of a word, but certainly for depending upon what the item or the issue is for enforcement and tracking, communities are going to have the opportunity for the state energy office to assist with that. Here's the interesting piece. There's no additional FTEs that are attached to the state energy office in order to do all of these additional requirements. It also says by January 1st, 2030, counties and municipalities with building codes must adopt a low energy and carbon code based version, which again, once that initial adoption goes through in 2025, it's much less of a, let's say, it's less of a constructive hurdle because you're already on that path. And so really it's structure within counties and municipalities from incremental adoptions. By the time you get to 2030, it shouldn't be a huge lift. And that's why they're putting these incremental steps in to begin with, so that it's not a pendulum swing that the amount that you need to have done by 2030 is going to be difficult for everybody to acclimate to or swallow. And plus, you know, it's the court of public opinion. Sustainability looks and feels very differently than it did even 2 years ago. And unfortunately, that's because of all the external stimulus that's happening, you know, the extreme weather conditions. Case in point today. House Bill 1218, we were talking about this at our city council meeting just on Tuesday night. That's the resource efficiency building electric vehicle bill. Requires future commercial and multifamily residents to include electric vehicle charging stations. And it sets a number, which is super helpful, actually, 10% of the parking spaces to also have EV charging stations attached. So the fiscal notes, always one of the best places to, for me anyway, rather than, you know, reading through the litany of pages and all of the nuances in the fiscal note, it gives you the summary, but then more importantly, it goes through all of the impacts. So every department weighs in on what that impact looks for them, what it looks like for them. So local governments across the board, increase workload to update the local review and inspections. So again, it's not unlike what we've been talking about at council, is getting on the front end, right? And so asking someone to do something, it's very different than saying, we're not approving your permit until you have it in there. So then that lessens the burden on any municipality or county to then have to continuously do the follow-up after the fact. Or worst case scenario, financially, you have to retrofit. right? So if you don't have those kind of signed, sealed, and delivered in your codes and or ordinances, makes it harder after the fact. Let's see. Producer responsibility, 1355, the producer responsibility for recycling. Let's see. Program will be implemented by a nonprofit organization with the newly created advisory board. And again, so it's going to be overseen by CDPHE. So we'll have to, I know these are being recorded in public, so we'll just talk about what the bill is and really about the efficiencies of the implementation. We'll just put it that way. We followed up with our oil and gas team today. We were all super surprised and want to do a shout out and a thank you to Councilmember Anderson, who alerted us to the air quality rules and regs town hall, if you will, that occurred in our backyard, and not one of us knew about it. So that's always always shows that there's plenty of room for communication and improvement, particularly when that organization is the beneficiary of a tremendous amount of data. Let's see. Here's a timely one for today. And it was referred to approps. That is the House Bill 1007, Assistant Landowner Wildfire Mitigation Bill. As we all know, today is we're on an extreme watch, which is quite frankly, some folks from some of our calls last night and this morning are thinking that these warnings, that everybody's just paying more attention and so they're on high alert. Although that is true, the accumulation of those 3 points, the low moisture, the high winds, and the ongoing drought situation that we have, it's a storm. Again, no pun intended. So, and what this does is it establishes the wildfire mitigation resources and best practices, who's doing what well. Counties can participate, municipalities, special districts, tribal, or a nonprofit organization. And it hasn't been, the reason it's going to approps is because it wants to create a state income tax credit to reimburse the landowner for any of the costs that occurred while performing the wildfire mitigation on the landowner's property. That's another one of those, geez, it sounds timely, it's pertinent, it's a great idea. But there isn't a tie to the administration of that program. So we'll continue to track what that looks like. And as we continue to talk about the state budget, I mean, we talked about at council on Tuesday night that anytime someone says structural, financial, those 2 words combined are red flags for any fiscally minded resident, leader, or elected official. And so when we have the state office of budget and planning and the governor's office saying budget looks solid for this year, but as we come into 23 and 24, the structural deficit that we are looking at, and again, the reason that impacts us is because a lot of these programs that are being initiated by the state from a funding perspective, when they come into 2023, 2024 fiscal year, if the funding isn't there, those folks that have become reliant on whatever program that is, whether it's fire mitigation, whether it's mental health, the education piece, our residents will look to the local governments to say, now it's a health and safety, right? It's just that the state isn't going to pay for it anymore. So you all need to start picking this up. So it puts the locals in a difficult position, not only financially, but when you know that something has that structural deficit that's coming in order to put these programs in place. It's a double whammy. It's tough to swallow, and anticipating how to maintain that. Let's see. The Transportation Innovation Grant Program. So I'm assuming that everybody is hearing the theme of these newly introduced bills, that it's the kind of the blue ribbon panel. New programs requiring additional administration and tracking. And this is another opportunity from a grant program. It was introduced on Wednesday, creates a competitive transportation innovative grant program to address the public school transportation shortage. Cooperative services, a consortium of school districts, local governments, community organizations that partner with school districts to apply for various grants to address again, the transportation shortage. And then share best management, what works, what doesn't work. But it's one thing to increase salaries to attract bus drivers. It's another thing when you can't get the buses. And it's another thing when public transportation as a whole lessens the reliance on school districts and the school buses. And again, we don't always think about just the local pieces, right? This is a lot for the rural communities that have severe impact, just across the board. Eligible applicants serve students of color, students from under-resourced communities who are disproportionately impacted by the transportation shortages to access school districts because of their limited access to transportation. Let's see, the collective bargaining bill has now been, well, now there's just one piece left. So it started with about 14, and now it's just counties. So, and again, Broomfield's always been able to do that. So it's really neither here nor there for us, but for the other smaller counties and larger counties, quite frankly, that either aren't home rule and can't have the ability to initiate them themselves, that will in fact be an impact. And with that, we'll do some questions. Jean.
Let's see, on the CC4CA legislative call that's coming up at noon that we have on the same Friday, related to the wildfire situation and the legislation, we are going to discuss Senate Bill 206 from Senator Fenberg. Mm-hmm. So they're going to set up some offices in the state for disaster resilience rebuilding programs. There's going to be an office under DOLA that's going to administer grants to homeowners. There's going to be a sustainability rebuilding office in the Colorado Energy Office. And there's going to be an office of climate preparedness. So it has, of course, some money attached to it. But I mean, we're supposed to discuss it at CC4CA. I skimmed it. It didn't seem like it had any, adverse impact on what we could do locally. You know, it's a setting up these statewide offices that in theory would, if we unfortunately were the subject of disastrous emergencies, that we could take advantage of. So, you know, that's on the agenda at CC4CA. I just thought I'd flag that.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's to the tune of $20 million. You're setting, so again, it's just from a realistic perspective. I mean, we're looking at almost 36 new departments, divisions, programs coming out of this year's legislature. I don't even know what to say about it, Jean. They're gonna try to attach $20 million. And my question would be, where are they going to get that $20 million to continue this in 2024? But yeah, no adverse impacts for us. What else?
I was on the CCAT legislative call or general meeting call yesterday. It was. So they were talking about legislation. There was a preview of a concept bill from Senator Bridges that's supposed to be coming for a workforce housing trust authority. So it's supposed to address the housing crisis for the teachers, the, you know, social workers, that economic demographic.
Sure.
It states in its preface that it recognizes that CHAFA is set up to, you know, deal with a little lower socioeconomic demographic, and that this is addressing the gap. So it's going to set up a workforce housing trust authority, and they are going to be allowed to hold property. They're going to be property owners. The idea would be that they would own equity with private developers of these properties.
They'll be equity partners.
Yeah. So I just wanted to flag that, since we are always having housing as our priority, that's a little different gap filling program that I mean, we've certainly talked about this need, but it's meant to address that gap. And I don't know if it will go anywhere, but we did see the draft. The draft was attached to the CCAT general meeting, and we had that to look at.
Good. Thank you, Jean. And thanks for your work on those, having a Broomfield face on those. We appreciate it. Miss Anderson, anything from you?
Nothing particular. There's just so much happening right now. Like I'm kind of scrolling through trying to get caught up, so I don't have any specific questions. There's
okay.
I should.
No, you shouldn't. There he is. Hello, Councilmember Schaaf.
Howdy.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm watching the winds come in from the west, and it's a little ominous.
Well, it's going to get much worse at about 12:30.
Yeah, I can believe that. But it's always a little weird being, you know, right next to the water towers and watching all of it fly in from the west, watching the clouds move. And so here it comes.
Yep.
I have a question on, I believe the bill is 1026. It's Shannon Bird's tax credit for businesses concerning transportation and the use of multimodal. So I'm kind of in a funny position because the Northwest Mayors and Commissioners is in support of this bill. CCAT is in an amend position. There's coalitions that are trying to be put together in terms of trying to better this bill and wanting to connect, I believe, the aspects from 1038, Matt Gray's bill that failed 9-1 in committee. So looking at that, how do we, I guess my question for staff is, have we had conversations with the business community here in Broomfield to see kind of what do they want out of that bill? What do they want as incentives? How are they able to, because I do believe that the business community is in support of the goals of the program, but how do they really, what are they really looking for, and what do they need to help incentivize their workforce to use alternative modes of transportation?
That's a great question, and part of what's been discussed not just Broomfield Chamber, but the bigger chambers. And Sarah's on the phone. I'll start, and if Sarah has anything to add. From the Denver Chamber, from the Adams County Economic Development Chamber, and from OEDIT, which is the Office of Economic Development at the state. Incentivizing the businesses to incentivize their folks starts with the education piece. Businesses across the board are thinking that they have educated and offered. That's why you're not seeing a big influx from the business community on this bill. A 50% reimbursement is what is on the table, and it has been on the table. It's really, it comes down to Councilmember Schaaf. What is a financial incentive enough for people to change their habits? And over the last few years, that answer has been no. Case in point, when they increased the outreach and engagement, and when I say the, I mean kind of the big businesses and the TODs, transit-oriented development, particularly those businesses that surround that transit-oriented development. If you were either riding or on the verge of wanting to take transit, then an incentive would push you over in order to do that. The population that they find, it doesn't matter what the incentive is. You're either going to be in your car or you're not. So from our business, again, you would think that Broomfield would kind of be a hub, given that, 80% of our folks work somewhere else. I think another piece of that is you'll see the transition. And there was just a really fascinating Wobekin, who's the economist up at CU. I was at a Friday morning alum breakfast from UCD, and they had Shoshana, they had reps from NADA, they had, so it was kind of an intersection between sustainability, lowering emissions, where our roads are, don't have the funds to even shore it up, let alone take that next step, whether it is the bus, whether it's BRT. It's one of those, again, you're not going to be able to incentivize people in order to get there. And now they even have less of an impetus because of all the work from home. So they are tracking and seeing what once may have incentivized a person to change their daily habits has been even greatly or more reduced. Greatly isn't the right word, but even more reduced because so many people are working at home now and the remote. And so really the impetus, Devin, is going to be on businesses, not necessarily incentivizing their employees, but keeping work from home as an option. That
Yeah,
is-
I was kind of curious of that because I do think that plays into the whole mix in terms of reducing VMTs. I did see the program that's being rolled out by Community Solutions to, basically provide, people with a ride on the Flatiron Flyer free of charge. And I think that is one of those that is, just getting people to, get back on the bus. Gene and I, we rode the Flatiron Flyer down to Denver a couple of weeks ago. And it's an experience, and it's an experience that I haven't had for quite a while. But, nowadays, the buses are, they aren't jam packed. Union Station has its challenges right now, but riding the bus is a whole lot easier, than trying to get parking down in Denver. So it does have its advantages, but I think it's where we were pre-pandemic is there was a lot of people using that service. And now where we are post-pandemic, there's people that were using transit are just now weary of doing that again. What does it look like? How do I get back into that rhythm of doing that? So I like that program, and hopefully we can continue to expand that. There's the Ozone free fare month, I think, that's going to be coming up. That's another one of those programs. It's just getting people, to have that ability to get back in transit and try that again. So thanks for the information about that, Bill.
Yeah, of course. And the Colorado Chamber is supporting that bill. Why wouldn't they? Right? Heidi said that let's see what that question is here. She's got a landscaping crew. It's loud. What other housing bills are moving on in addition to the one that gives senior deferment? She's been dropped off of the invites for CCAT. Tracking 1282, which is the Innovative Housing Incentive Program. 1304, the investments for local affordable, and the revolving loan for investment in affordable housing. So it's not unlike any of the other bills that from a grant perspective, from a that's going to be the wave of the future for the next 5 years, and the reason that is because the money that they're front loading into those programs right now will stay. So it's not a line item to continue to put funds for each one of these programs, any whether it's a rebate or an incentivized program or a grant program. It's administering where the rub is. So all of those, again, there's no reason not to have those bills go through. It's what's called in the Colorado, they're passive bills, right? So you have to opt in, you have to sign up for the grant, and if you qualify for the grant, then you get the grant. It's not a mandate other than the senior property tax is not, clearly it's not a mandate. You do have to sign up for that. But again, it's an investment, because eventually those seniors will have to pay those funds back. But that in and of itself is just, that is a mammoth endeavor. Just that bill is, it is going, again, just kind of a administrative, just an administrative nightmare. And the Innovative Housing Incentive Program, it's not unlike the 3 bills that Jean just said, right? It's creating another office, another program in the Office of Economic Development, OEDIT, for grants and loans to existing businesses to develop new types of innovative housing. So there's probably 30%, 40%, 50% of the 600 bills that do just that. They create another division that is then singularly focused on just a plethora of topics, whether it's wildfire mitigation or the whole host of housing. What else? Let's see on the. Do we have someone on staff who's chasing grants? Every single department chases grants. That's another great thing about having the Independent Housing Authority is being kind of singularly focused on all housing related in order to capitalize on the funds, on the 3 million that council agreed to for the seed money for the Independent Housing Authority. So they're all over. HHS, 20% of what they do is grant funded. So well versed. Same with transportation. So yes, we do many. Let's see. I think that's it from. Anyone else? Jason, did I miss anything on the Jason and I were talking just on Tuesday. Actually, that's when we were Lori, when you had sent that email, and I had said to the folks that were sitting around the table, geez, so how come you guys didn't tell us that they were coming to BCC? And everybody was like, what? So Jason followed up with his crew, but there's a huge ticket line item to the tune of 300 plus positions that are that CDPHE is asking for. Again, it goes right in line with something's going to give, right? So if you're doing, and that's just one department. So this is the amount of programs and divisions that the state has added this year and the dollars that are attached to it is unlike any year we've ever seen before. It has grown, this government has grown exponentially, but nothing's gone away. So there hasn't been anything that has been replaced, just a whole lot of ads. Jace, you want to talk just a little bit about the CDPHE, whether it's their budget allocation and or any of the program stuff?
Yeah, I think you hit it, Jen, and they did bring it up at that meeting we had with the Air Pollution and Control Division on the rulemaking. They've put it into their JBC request to have these additional staff and air monitoring that's going to occur across the entire state. And with us being downgraded recently by the EPA, even further need for monitoring. But that being said, one thing we brought up with the state is we could keep monitoring our air, but we have to have that other conversation of what does it mean? So what does it mean to human health? And I think they heard it on Tuesday loud and clear from us that that's the gap in the knowledge base of moving from data collection to interpretation and focusing more on the right question. So that would be the highlight I would give on air monitoring is this is needed given our high ozone, but at the same time, we also have to start looking at what's the impacts we're seeing from air emissions.
Yeah, the what's next. And really that fundamentally to me, that is CDPH's role. I mean, it's the contemplation, it's the analysis. I mean, what good is a toxicologist if you're not going to do anything with what you, I mean, at some point you got to get out of the information gathering and get into the now what, or at least have enough diversification to have a comprehensive, those that think about it, those that gather it, those that translate it, those that digest it, and then those that execute.
And Jen, when you were talking about all of these new large divisions, departments, offices, what happens when you create that at the state is it leads, they try to break down silos, but it could lead to further silos. And so that was the other thing we told the state, is that it would be nice to have the environmental side talking specifically to the health side, looking at asthma, looking at cancers, all of those specific issues. So we tried to get our message across when they came down.
Yeah, maybe a little black belt lean thinking is in order before the next legislative session, right? What are we doing well?
Yeah, we could send
Got the
Dan
right
Casey
folks.
back up there.
Anybody else? Sure appreciate you all. Want you all to know that when we say we are on high alert, we truly mean it. And Jean, for your question this morning on the businesses, yes, from a notification perspective, enforcement is something else, right? So it's the fire department in conjunction with PD, but that enforcement piece, it's more of a, hey, when we have a ban, much like fireworks, right? Writing the summons in, there's that gray area when we say from that enforcement piece. So it's a dual. It's between the police department and the fire department. Generally, the fire department notifies us on those and not the other way around. I mean, our PD wouldn't call the fire department unless something was on fire. So the reversed of that outreach and engagement enforcement piece, it's really a dual effort. And we haven't struggled, and I shouldn't say we haven't struggled with it because we haven't been in these times before. As the message that went out yesterday, this is we've never seen anything like this in the last 40 years. And it's not unlike 6 weeks ago when they said that the fire season was going to begin in the state of Colorado in early April, 2 days after they said that. And clearly we know that it started in December, but from the three elements that are adding to what we have today, we are going to consistently see that through this summer. That culmination of every bad element that creates us to be on high alert. All of us sat around yesterday with our, activating the war room, that this is just part of, it's not going to be based on a situation. It's going to be, it's now daily, it's embedded now in what we do every day. From a crew perspective, from an emergency management perspective, from a North Metro fire perspective, it's just part of the deal.
I guess following up on that, so I understand that we couldn't do a massive enforcement effort, of the business to make sure the businesses weren't causing sparks in any way. But given that this is unfortunately going to repeat itself frequently, would it be helpful are there a list of likely candidates? Do we have a good handle on the businesses that would be most apt to cause sparks, welding, grinding, soldering, like construction sites or something like that, where we would not only give notification, but we would send somebody out to the most likely offenders in this situation, where we could prioritize our enforcement?
Well, yes, and so when the winds pick up that add to this level of concern, from a construction perspective, those elements would preclude the activity themselves, is what North Metro Fire said. So they're not going to be out there with 60 miles an hour winds doing any work, not because they are concerned about the fire, right? But because they're precluded from that activity in and of itself. And we haven't had repeat offenders because we haven't been in this circumstance, right? The compliance level, when North Metro Fire goes out or PD goes out, except for like individual residences, we have those folks. The burning his trash in his backyard, right? But from a business perspective, our businesses are compliant. You know, our North Metro or PD shows up, Gene, and says, I will be shocked if we have to do a repeat performance. Everybody's is, I mean, again, just from a personal level, no one, God forbid, would want something that they were doing to contribute, even unattendedly, right? So I think this, everybody as a whole is highly, highly concerned and paying attention.
So Jennifer, I have a question on that one, because I get what you're saying on the construction sites, like you're not gonna be out grinding in 60-mile-an-hour winds, but then there's the question of, and I've already gotten several people have reached out to me about this today, very concerned about the fire weather issue today, extreme, and ongoing operations on a well site. And it's like, they aren't stopping their operations though. And
no, they aren't.
Would they dare to combust something? I mean, we have the situation with the fire underneath the combustion trailer. You know, too much sending liquids to a ECD unit meant to handle gas, and you're shooting a flame out the top. Those things could still, that's not going to preclude those things from happening though, correct? Because they're still going ahead. Like, is there anything that the winds, is there anything in the oil and gas realm that the winds would hinder where they would cut back their operations? And that one remains, I definitely don't want sparks from my, you know, construction stuff happening, you know, next to my house, but that's the other one where it just baffles people that it isn't being taken more seriously. It's off the topic of legislation, but leave it there, like.
Yeah, no, there isn't, high winds would not preclude, a storm would not preclude. There isn't any, no, there isn't. What else?
I mean, this legislative session's just about done, right?
3 weeks out, buddy. 3 weeks. Yeah, it's like anything else, right? It's, you know, getting ready to go to the dance, and then being at the dance is all fun. It's only when the dance is over, that's when the work begins.
Yep.
So, and it's election time,
I guess,
right? So as soon as we come out of this, it's election time.
Hey, last legislative update, we had a conversation about universal pre-K, and I wanted to follow up. So there have been some more conversations since then. Dan Casey, myself, as a board of directors for the Broomfield Early Childhood Council, a couple of our other board members, as well as our executive director, Jessica Jones, had a conversation around that and kind of looked to say who can take this role on. We're in conversations with Boulder as well as Adams, Boulder Valley School District, as well as Adams 12, to look at kind of who is going to be that local governing organization around that universal pre-K. Boulder's going to have a kind of a community meeting, Adams, and I believe it's their Boulder Early Childhood Council, Adams County Early Childhood Council. They're going to have some community meetings. And then at a probably early part of May, Broomfield is going to have their community meeting as well to kind of talk about this. What does it look like? We're trying to find out who is going to be that local or government organization. A lot of people are saying it's not us. We don't have the capacity to do this. So right now it's kind of a version of hot potato. Who's going to take this on? So definitely more to come on this, but it's in light of legislation, this is a bill that's still moving through. I think actually it passed. It will go on to, or no, I got kind of mixed up this last week. So it's either past one chamber and it's into the other chamber, or it just passed the other chamber and it's headed towards the governor's desk. But all intensive signs looks like it's going to be headed for the governor's desk without a whole lot of major changes. And this is still one of those issues that looms is how the local government organization functions and whose responsibility of that is. And it'll definitely be interesting to see how that rolls out.
It's a hot potato for sure, because just add that to the list of all these great, really meaningful, impactful programs that the state doesn't have a structure to implement.
Well, they're definitely setting up that structure, but they're setting up the structure while building is it building the plane and flying the plane at the same time? I think that's where they are.
And I have not ever seen one of those land, not once.
This is a big one to not land.
Well, here's the bottom line is it has to land, right? It's just whether it lands with the wheels down or it crashes, but it will land. Well, everyone, have a good weekend.
Thank you, you too. I'm going to go fly a kite.
Yeah, watch those clouds rolling in.
That's right. That's right. I told my kids this is the gap of time that we can go fly a kite before it gets real gusty.
Yeah, you should probably do it like within the next 2 hours, Dee. Seriously.
That's right. That's where we're going right now.
All right.
All right.
It's going to start pumping up. Everybody, thanks. Take care. Jean, Lori, anything, just call us. All right. We have all hands are on deck right now. All right. Shoot me a text. We'll turn it around within moments. Okay.
Yep. Thanks, Jennifer. And we'll see you. Fingers crossed.